Hey guys, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get started here in a few minutes and give everybody some time to get into the room. I just want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. And if you want to in the chat, just leave a note of where you're joining us from today. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes once everybody gets in. All right, guys, we give it just a few more minutes here as everybody makes their way in. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. If you want to, in the chat box, leave a note of where you're joining us from today. I'd love to know. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, so weather's not too bad here. Today we had snow yesterday, and I think we're actually expecting more snow tonight, which is kind of strange for us, but we'll see how that goes. Oh, Arnold, Tempe, Arizona. Yeah, I don't think there's much snow out there. Welcome, Tony from Boulder. Just give it another minute here just to let everybody get in, and then we're going to get started. All right, I think everybody's here who's joining us today, so we're going to get started. Let me pull up the presentation here. All right, guys, so I want to welcome you to an introduction to digital post-processing for creatives. So I've got about a 30 to 40-minute presentation that I'm going to go through here, and then we're going to open it up to some questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them. So it'll take about an hour of your time today. Thank you for joining me and taking time out of your afternoon. So let's get started. So my name's Taylor Mathis. I'm a food photographer based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I do a series called Photographing Food, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. And then I also have a food blog called Taylor Takes a Taste, and then I've written the Southern Tailgating Cookbook. So today we're going to be talking about a couple things actually. We're going to talk about organization and how you can use Lightroom and Photoshop to stay organized and stay on top of keeping together, the massive amounts of images that you shoot. And then we're also going to talk about developing your images and how the software can take your images from, okay looking in the camera to something that's really stunning. Then we're going to talk about image manipulation and how you can use Photoshop to create images that you just cannot create in the camera. But using Photoshop, you can make these images come to life and create things that you never would have thought possible. Then we're going to talk about exporting and then also merging text with your images, because that's a whole way to create content that's incredibly valuable by adding both images and text together. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you about a program I've developed and where you can go next, with these skills to further refine them and further develop them. All right, so let's get started. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but Photoshop is no longer hundreds of dollars at once to buy. You can now get Photoshop and Lightroom for $9.99 a month. And with that, you get the most updated version always for $9.99. So I think you can buy Lightroom by itself for about 150 bucks. And, when the new version of Lightroom, because it's Lightroom 5 right now, so when Lightroom 6 comes out, you'll have to pay to upgrade that. But with the cloud, you just get the new one. Whenever it comes out, you can just, upgrade, download right there. Just, basically $10 a month, you have access to Lightroom. But then you also have access to Photoshop. And this is the full Photoshop. This is not Elements. This is the full thing that, the standalone version used to cost close to $1,000. And then every time you wanted to upgrade, which is about every year and a half or so, Adobe comes out with a new version, that's another $200-300. But you get all the new versions every month whenever they come out for just $10 a month. So it's really a game changer in that it's now there's no more price barrier to having access to this amazing software. You get it for only $10 a month. So with that, there is a demand, and I'm sure you want to know how to use this. Or if you don't really know how to use it or know what the software is, we're talking about like what the software can do for you and how it can really improve your workflow. So first, we're going to talk about organization. So if a magazine wanted to publish a picture you took 2 years ago, would you be able to find it? And what about if a company wanted to see all your tomato pictures? Could you send them every one you've taken? So for example, like say you did a blog post about tomatoes and you've just got a lot of tomato pictures on there because you went to a farm, you've got some from your backyard, and then there's a tomato company that's doing a big story and they need a bunch of stock imagery. And they want to just get it all from one place instead of dealing with a lot of different photographers. So they come to you and they're like, oh, hey, can we buy these images from you? Would you be able to pull up all the ones you have quickly and send them over to the company so they can take a look at them? Here's another situation. Could you send a client from last year a new high-res version of their file in case they lost it and they needed a new version? Well, Lightroom solves all of those problems. It allows you to keyword your images so you could quickly find any tomato image. It allows you to pull up images based on whatever you tag them as in certain categories, or how you organize them in certain folders, or however you want to name them or sort them. There's a lot of different ways that you can set up systems to stay organized so you always know where certain images are. So if you've never been in Lightroom or seen Lightroom before, this is what it looks like. So it's divided up into a bunch of different modules, and this module that we're in is called the library module. And it allows you to add keywords to images. It allows you to create catalogs, folders, and this is where you go to have your images organized and create your organizational systems. Now, I like folders, catalogs, and collections because they give you the sanity of knowing, okay, I've got these images, they're in a certain place, and I know where to go to get them. You can quickly, based on how you set up your organization system, go and find images from a few years ago, or you can go, find something from last month, or if it's at a certain location, you can find it by that. So based on how you set up your organization system, you can quickly find images, without stressing out or spending several hours going through hard drive after hard drive of, oh, where's that image? Then it also provides you efficiency with the ratings and color labels. So when you do a shoot and you've got several subjects you're shooting, it can take a long time to go through and just organize all those images. But with the ratings and color labels, you can set pictures to different number ratings, and it's done with stars. So it can be anywhere from 0 to 5 stars. And then within that, you can also assign them a color label. So let's say that you're shooting 4 different dishes at a restaurant. So you would label the appetizers as the green color label, the salad is the blue, the main entree is the red, and the dessert is the yellow. So if you only wanted to look at the appetizer images and go through them, you would just filter for the greens, and then you would go through and rate your best ones. Then you'd go through the other colors that are other dishes. And then finally at the end, if you just want to see your best images, you can just show those rated images. So it's really easy to, take what would be hundreds of images and, whittle them down to just, 10 and then to just a few so that you can really focus in on your best ones and start the editing process. So that brings us to developing in Lightroom. So, organization, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's great when it's in place, because if it's in place and you don't really think about it, it's doing its job. Now, developing, this is the fun part. This is when you get to take your images and make them from something that's pretty good in the back of the camera to, oh my gosh, wow, that is an awesome shot, and really have those jaw dropping, or if you're shooting food photography, those images that make people start to salivate and really show an interest in it. So this is the develop module in Lightroom. And Lightroom and Photoshop both work together in that you can take your images from the develop module, make some changes, then export them into Photoshop, make some more changes, and then bring it back as a saved version into Lightroom. So the two programs, they work fluidly together, and there are times when you're going to use each. Now, when you're making your adjustments and edits in Lightroom, you're not actually editing the file. So if you mess up, it's not going to destroy the image. Lightroom is recording all those changes, and you can easily go back and undo them, or say you do 2 or 3 steps and you want to go back to like a step 6 steps ago. You can quickly just go back, or go back to the original and take away everything. So you're not editing directly on the image. So you can't destroy it, which is nice. Because if you are editing, say, in Photoshop and you save over the image, then that's a problem, because you may not be able to get that original image back. But with Lightroom, you're never editing on the actual image. And a lot of this is because Lightroom, it handles RAW files. It handles JPEGs too, but RAW files are the highest level of file in your camera. It's going to give you the most information, and it's what you should be shooting on if your camera supports RAW. Usually you'd have to have a program to read the RAW files, and Lightroom can do that, so you're solved there. But a RAW file is basically, it's capturing all the information that every pixel on your sensor recorded when that light hit it. So it's not actually an image. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros and numbers and information that it's capturing. And then the software takes that information and turns it into the image you see. So you're never actually editing on it, because it's just numbers. So if you say you added some to the saturation, it would know where to add that, and it would just write a little note on the file saying, oh, add this. And if you want to go back, it can just go back to the original. So it's great for processing RAWs. And how you make all these changes, or over on the right hand side, you see all these sliders. You slide bars over to the right or to the left to make different changes. So let's take a look at some of those changes. These are just 5 quick adjustments that you can do in Lightroom to your food photography, and they make a pretty big difference. First one being exposure. And sometimes, if you look at the back of the camera, it may look exposed correctly, and then you put it on your computer and it's a little darker than you thought. Or, if you take it at what your camera says should be the correct exposure, it could be underexposed. So you can quickly adjust that exposure in Lightroom. And you've got a range of 4 stops, either increasing or decreasing, to adjust that exposure. So here's an example of the 0 image is just what the camera shot. On the left is I took it down half a stop. On the right, I took it up half a stop. So you can see that those little changes have a pretty big impact on the image. Next one is color temperature. So with color temperature, basically that's how cool or warm the image is. And you can see here that by increasing, the temperature from 4 to 5000 K, we made it warmer, and as opposed to making it cooler on the left. So you can change how the feel and the color of the image looks. And this is really important when you have a lot of white in your image, because sometimes you want that white to be neutral and to not have a color shift. Like you can see on the left of the 4000 K, because we've cooled it down a little, the white looks a little cooler. And then on the right, we've increased the color a little, so it looks a little warmer. So what you can do is there's this tool called the white balance tool, where you can use it. It's like this little dropper tool, and you can click on a certain part of the image and it will set the white balance to neutral there, which will neutralize the rest of the image. So it's a pretty cool feature that you can quickly get the correct white balance by doing that. So another one is contrast. You can either increase the contrast or decrease the contrast. Again, that's just kind of the look and what's the subject matter you're going for. If it's something that's dark and moody, you may want more contrast. If it's kind of like a light, bright, airy feel, you may want less contrast. So again, you can go up and down. And here I've got examples on the right where it's increasing contrast, and then on the left where it's a decrease. Now, this is an example of sharpening. So when you take a picture and it comes out of the camera, it's going to need some sharpening done to it. And what sharpening is it's not focus or out of focus. Like, it cannot take an out of focus image and make it in focus. It's taking an image that is already in focus and just making it sharper and kind of pop a little more. And it does this by, on the edges, increasing the contrast by adding either black or white on the edges of those. And you need to be zoomed in at like 100% like this to see that. So this is an example of just no sharpening applied. This is with sharpening at 50. So notice how before and after, before and after, and notice how it's just like a little crisper looking, but we've also introduced some more noise when we increase the sharpening. So fortunately, with the fit tool is you can reduce the noise. So here's it now when we reduce the noise. You can see how that just kind of smooths everything out. So when using sharpening and the noise reduction tool, it's just a balance between making it sharper and then smoothing out the noise at the same time. So you'll just have to play with it and find kind of a happy medium between them. But with Lightroom, you can easily and quickly make those changes. You can also adjust specific parts of the images. For instance, the highlights, the shadows, the whites, and the blacks. So on the left, we've got an example of just the normal shot image. And then on the right, we've taken the highlights down to -100. We've taken the shadows down by 82. We've increased the whites by 24 and taken the blacks down by 17. And you can see how this image overall just has some more contrast to it. And, it looks, in that shadow area there where the tangerines are, it's definitely darker in there. And it's just got this more darker, moody look. So you can quickly make changes like that and really transform kind of the mood and tone of the image. The cloning and healing tools are both in Lightroom and Photoshop. In Lightroom, there's kind of your basic tools, but for heavier retouching jobs, I bring it into Photoshop. And what it does is it takes pixels and it either copies them directly or clones them, or it uses a formula to kind of replicate what it thinks the pixel should be. And this is great for instances where you just cannot fix things on set. For example, the image on the right, there's no way I could have taken out those air bubbles and still kept the topping looking nice. That's just what happened when I baked it in a transparent container. So on the left, I was able to clone and heal those bubbles away, fixing a problem that I just could not fix on set. If you do have the ability to fix it on set, I always recommend doing that, just because generally it will take a lot less time on set than to sit at the computer and fix it. So something that may take like 3 or 4 seconds on set to fix may take like 20 minutes in Photoshop. So it's worth your time to, when you can, just fix it on set. But for the things that you can't fix on set, it is nice having this as an option. Okay, so the curve tool, this is an incredibly powerful tool that is both in Lightroom and Photoshop. And what you can do with this is you can increase or decrease certain parts of the image. So what I mean by that is, you see on the right-hand side, the Lightroom, how there's this kind of different gray outline behind it. What that is that's a histogram of the image. So on the right-hand side, you'll have the highlights. On the left-hand side, you'll have the shadows. So right's pure white, left's pure black, like at the very end. And then in the middle, just different shades of gray. So if you move the line up, then the part of the image that's below it is going to be increased. If you move it down, it's going to be decreased. So let me show you an example here. So here's an example of an image that just has no curve applied to it. When it's a diagonal line like this, it's just as the image is. But now we're applying an S curve. So can you notice how the curve is higher on the highlight side, and I'm raising it up? And you can see in the image that, the part of the jar that's with the hands touching it is brighter. So let's go to before Now pay attention to the front of the jar and that highlight. Notice how it's gotten brighter with this curve. Now let's take a look at the shadows. Notice how when that dot gets pulled down, it decreases and makes those areas darker. So you can see like the hands, the shadows on the back of them, the back side of the jar. Let's go look at it before and after. Before and after. Now, this is an example of an S-curve which adds contrast to the image. This curve, on the other hand, is kind of like a matte curve, and it decreases contrast. So notice how it looks completely different. And we're actually raising the minimum value of the blacks and the whites and pulling down the middle to just give it this flatter look. So take a look at it here. Now we're going to go back to the original. Now back to the matte curve. So you can see with the curve, you can do a lot of different things. And with the curve, you can change the channels too. Right now, this curve is affecting the red, greens, and blues. But if you go in just the red channel or just the green or just the blue, you can start to shift the color in certain parts of the images and create some pretty cool looks or do some color correcting by doing that. Now the curve in Photoshop, you can take it even further by adding blend modes to it and adding masking so that you can have it apply to only certain parts of the image. So that brings us into part 3, manipulating your images. And this is when you have to go into Photoshop. And Photoshop is an incredibly powerful program that over the last 25 years has evolved tremendously. It can do some really amazing things. A few things I like to do with it. I like to use it for creating composites, for heavy retouching where I'm going to have to zoom way in and I need a combination of cloning, healing, and patching tools. That Lightroom's good for like one or two little things, but if you're significantly altering the image, then Photoshop's going to be a lot more powerful with its retouching tools, and that you can also paint with brushes and not just be stuck with just a circle that you have to move from one area to the other. You can also create panoramas with it, and then you can blend layers together. So here's an example of a composite. You can see that the image on the left, I shot this in a restaurant, and I was trying to capture just the ambient lighting in the room. Notice how the food, it looks okay, not great. It's got kind of this yellowish cast to it, and the background's just kind of bright. Not overall, not an incredibly interesting image. Now the image in the center, I lit it with a flash and focused only on the exposure of the food. But you'll see the background is just dark and doesn't, those wine bottles, they're just kind of hidden into the just kind of this black abyss. And I want to see some detail in that wooden cabinet in the back. And then in the chair too, I want to see some detail in it. So what I did in the final image on the right is I combined the two images, the ambient and the flash, together using masking and Photoshop's layer concept to be able to create this final image. So let me show you what that means. So here I am in Photoshop, and you can see that on the right-hand side, the layers panel, that I've got 3 different layers. I've got the ambient image, which you see right here on the bottom. And then on top of that, I have a flash layer. And you'll see that this flash layer has got this white little box next to it with kind of some gray on it. What that is that is a layer mask. So if you think of layers like a sheet of paper, and that if you put one on the bottom and you stack another one on top, it's going to cover up what's on the bottom, unless the piece of paper has some holes in it. And if it has holes in it, you can see through the bottom, see through it. Or say that piece of paper was kind of like wax paper and kind of translucent. You'd be able to kind of see through that and see parts of the bottom coming through. That's what you can do with layers. You can adjust the opacity of them. So it could be a solid sheet of paper, or it could be something more translucent. And you can use a mask to take out or cut away pieces of that paper to allow stuff from the layer below it to come through. So to make this work, what I have to do on the flash layer is I have to take away parts of the flash layer to allow parts of that background to come through. But I don't have to take it away all the way. I can use different opacity levels to have them kind of blend together and show through. So here's an example of what that flash layer looks like with the mask applied. So you can see that I've got most of the dish coming through, But then in the background, I've got some darkening and some parts you can see all the way through. And when you line the flash layer and the ambient layer on top of each other, you're left with here, this final combined layer that shows the two put together. So notice how we could see through to the background. It's got some of that ambience coming through, but we still have the nice flash lighting on the dish, and it doesn't have that kind of yellow restaurant color. So that's just an example of the power of layers with Photoshop and how you can really start to manipulate it and combine multiple images together to create stuff that you just could not create in the camera. So here's an example of the photo merge tool in creating a panorama. So on the top, you can see in Lightroom, I've got 12 images of a mountain scene. And I did this by kind of zooming in and slowly moving my camera over. And what this does is it creates enough image. It creates the images that you can then photo merge together. The key is to overlap the images so Photoshop can line them up and line the overlapped portions up together. So you could take a wider lens and then just crop this out. But the problem with doing that is you're throwing just a ton of information away, and the final image that you have may not be as sharp, and it may, you may be limited in what you can actually do with it because it's such a small size. When you do this approach and merge photos together to create a panorama, you're ending up with a massive file that you can do a lot of different things with, that you can even crop into that if you need to, or you can print it as large as you want. So using the photo merge tool, what it does is it aligns the layers and then it automatically masks different parts in and out to create this version that you see below. So this brings us to part 4. Now, Photoshop and Lightroom are great because they can organize your images, you can edit your images, but really all of this is of no use if you cannot export your images and put them in the final crop ratio, the final dimensions, the final file type, or the final use that you're going to need. So for example, let's say that you have this great rectangular image, you love how you composed it, but in the final use, it has to be a square. So you're going to have to crop that, and you can either crop it yourself and choose what part of the square you want to, or you can let the person using it at the end crop it that way. Or if it's a software or, say Instagram or like Facebook you're uploading to it, then they'll just kind of decide where they're going to crop it. Another one is dimensions. Let's say you're uploading it to a site or a blog, and there has to be certain dimensions for the final image. And if it doesn't fit those, then they'll either enlarge it or it'll kind of just run over outside the borders and really just not look good. With Lightroom, you can export your file to be a certain dimension so it will always fit. Another one is whether you need it for print or for web. If you need it for print, then you're going to need a resolution that's a lot larger than for web because a printed file is just going to require that much information. If someone wants to print it and you only give them a web file, then their print may not, may be kind of blurry and really might not look that great. And then they'll think that your work wasn't that great, when what actually happened was you didn't give them the correct file, the correct resolution they needed. And that kind of ties into file type too. So say you're working on a cookbook or something, and you know that the images need to be TIFFs and not JPEGs. TIFFs are much larger files that are generally used for printing. But if you export a TIFF and it's just going on the web, you don't need all that extra information. So knowing what your final use is and understanding how the photo needs to be exported is key to making it a successful image. So with Lightroom, you can control all these variables. You can choose where you want to export it to. You can choose a new file name. If you're doing a sequence of images, you can give it a custom name. You can choose if it's a JPEG, if it's a TIFF, or it could even be the original raw file. So say you're exporting stuff over to a new computer and they wanted the raw files, then you could export those and they can make changes that way. You could also choosing the color space, whether you want it to be the web color space of sRGB, or if it needs to be ProPhoto or Adobe 1998, if it's going to go to print or needs further editing. And you can also choose the image sizing and the exact resolution that you need. A really cool feature I like about Lightroom is the print templates feature. And with this feature, you can just drag and drop images into a print template, and then you can print to file, and it'll make a JPEG that are the exact dimensions that you need for your final use. So for example, you can make all these different things from a template, and it literally takes seconds to just take the images and drag them in, and then just save them, and you've got it for whatever you need, whether it's Instagram or a blog post or Facebook or Twitter or any other type of media. You can make diptychs, triptychs, squares, or really any shape that you can think of. You can make a template for that and create it. Now, you can also take those final images that you have and then go into Photoshop and start to combine them together with text. And that allows you to create media that is just even more valuable because you're bridging an image and textual information together. So you can, change the font. You could add long paragraphs, short paragraphs. You can even, you see with this fire example down there, you can even take images and transpose them onto text. There's a lot of different ways that you can get creative and add in graphics and illustrations to blend those images and text together to create, really effective pieces of media. So where do you go next? The software is incredibly powerful, but it's not exactly the most intuitive thing in the world. So I want to help you figure out how you can implement Lightroom and Photoshop into your workflow. The price barrier is gone. For $10 a month, you now have access to this amazing software, but I want to help you understand how it works and how you can use it to your advantage and really get the most out of it and create the best work that you can. So I've created a course called Digital Post-Processing for Creatives, and it's designed around examples using practical situations that you're going to find yourself in and how to do it. This software does so many things. You don't need to know how to do everything. You need to know, though, how to achieve that end result you want using the software. So this course is a little different in that it's hosted through a membership site, through my site of Business of Creatives, which means that there are no enormous files to download. Whenever something, the software changes and I make updates to it, it's going to automatically be there. You don't have to re-download it, and you can access it from any computer or mobile device wherever you are. You just need an internet connection and you can log in and watch it. What the courses consists of is, right now it's of 52 videos and over 5 hours of content that are screen captures where you're watching me edit and I'm talking you through what I'm doing and showing you how the software works and how to use it in real world situations to edit your photography. I've also included some examples for you to try of like a composite with retouching, and I've got some print templates in there so you can quickly make the templates that I'm showing you. With this, it's a one-time fee. There's no recurring payments. It's not, one day it may morph into where it's a subscription-based program, but right now you pay once, you're in it forever. That's it. No more changes. You're in it. You get all the updates right to you. There's also a Facebook group with exclusive content that I'm going to put in there and a community of people who are in similar positions of you where we can share work and learn from each other. Now, there's also included in this the next evolution of photographing food, and that is photographing food weekly. So with this software, you can sit down and watch all the tutorials, but it takes time for all this stuff to sink in. And it takes just time of practicing and seeing different examples of how you can use these tools in different ways. So every week there'll be a new video up showing a different food shoot and showing how I'm using the post-processing tools to edit these images that I've shot. You also see the lighting setups, and I'll walk you through my methodology of what I was going for and why I made these decisions to end up with a final image. So all of this is available for $79. And if you'd like to check it out, I've got a preview site, which I'm going to post here in the chat. And what's on the preview site is you can see exactly what the videos are like. I've got some sample videos. I've got 2 episodes of Photographing Food Weekly, and you can see, what the program is and decide, if it's going to be correct for you. So I posted this above the chat for you to check out. Now, if you have any questions at all, please you can put them in the chat box, and they can be questions about the program, about editing, about food photography, really whatever you want. We can take the next 20 minutes or so and just have a discussion, and I want to help you with any problems that you may be having or questions that you may have. So feel free to just put them in the chat box, and I'll answer away. If you guys have any questions, yeah, Arnold, I think it's just you guys. There's Kurt's in here also. Yeah, this is I did the same presentation yesterday, so there are a couple more people in there then. But yeah, I mean, whatever questions you have, I've got the next 20 minutes. I'd love to help you however I can. So feel free to, ask away. And if you guys don't have any questions, we can end early. Just let me know what you would like to do. Okay, so Arnold's asking, concerning Lightroom, how do you get all of your files from various hard drives into Lightroom? So with Lightroom, it works on a catalog system where you can create catalogs of these images. So like every year I create a new catalog. So like in January, I created the 2015 catalog. Or if I'm working on a massive project that's going to have, a couple thousand images, I'll create a specific catalog just for that. But what you can do is you can import those images from the catalog, and you can set it up where they'll register on that drive. So if you're using like a Thunderbolt connection or something really fast where you can live edit from the drive, you can set it that way. Or you can put them in different places on your computer's hard drive and it'll know where they are. So you can set them up, you can copy them over or you can import them. There's different ways that you can do it, but through catalogs and through importing your images, you'll be able to get them on there. Yeah, kind of, except you won't really be like when you create the catalog, you won't be able to look at images that are outside of that catalog. So it's a way to just keep things where they need to be. And then if you need to access the other images, you can import them from other catalogs to that catalog, or you can switch catalogs and look over. But yeah, it's kind of like a master folder, but you can't really look outside of that folder. And then you can create other folders within that catalog. But you don't have to import the images every time you open it. They're going to be in that catalog, which is nice. Okay, so Arnold, I'm not sure what you mean by on my way, but so if you think of the catalog as it's this thing that you're creating with Lightroom that allows you to bring images into it. And what it's doing is it's storing previews of those images and the location of the actual file of those images to edit from and to work on. So if you I'm still trying to understand what you're trying to ask. That if you can have catalog, like you need to have the catalog with the images that you want to work on that hard drive where Lightroom is. So like on your main computer's hard drive. If you've got like separate other oh okay, that makes sense. So basically with I think what you're asking is that if you've got images on a bunch of different hard drives and for like space reasons you can't have all those images on your computers, what you can do is you can create catalogs, Lightroom catalogs on those drives, so when you insert that drive you can bring that catalog in, it'll know that those images are on the drive and can work on them from there. Or you can, on your desktop or laptop's hard drive, you can have a catalog there where you can bring images off from a hard drive, and the computer will know that that's where those images are and work from them from there. Yeah, so creating a catalog of each drive will allow you to work with the files. Yeah, so you're going to need a catalog to correspond with the files that are in there. Sorry, it took me a second to with the on the way the um to read through the stuff that's being typed in. So yeah, don't worry about it. The quick phrase that see what you're saying, by they just kind of show up. All right, I'm giving probably about 2 minutes or so. If no one's got any more questions, then we're gonna call it time. I really appreciate you guys coming out today and spending time out of your day, and I hope you learned something. And if you have any more questions, you can always send me an email at taylor@photographingfood.com. If you have any questions about the course or just food photography in general, just send me an email and I'll see how I can help you. All right, I'm going to stop the broadcast now, but I'll still stick around the chat for another minute or two. So thank you again for coming out today, and I hope you guys found this valuable, and I look forward to having you again on the next webinar.